All right, I think we're good. So again, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. We're going to talk about short sales and what they are and how you can profit from them tonight. Um, I believe that short sales is one of the often overlooked strategies that real estate investors and more specifically wholesalers miss, that they're leaving a lot of money on the table. And especially in the environment we're in now and the expected environment that is just around the corner as it relates to mortgage defaults, et cetera. I think that this is a very timely conversation that we're having. And I think that you're in the right place at the right time to discover this tonight. If you are brand new to real estate or just the investment community, you may or may not have heard of short sales. So I'm going to dive into that. But this is what our agenda is going to be. I'm going to spend just a couple minutes to tell you who I am and what qualifies me to have this conversation with you. Then I'm going to talk about what my greatest passion is in real estate investing and why that is my greatest passion. And then I'm going to define what a short sale is. Then I'll go through some of the common questions, the FAQs that I get on a regular basis around short sales and short sale investing. And then, of course, if you stick to the end, I got a free ebook that you can that I'll give you access to, and I'll tell you how you can contact me so that we can go further in this conversation if you desire. So my name is Keto Johnson, Keto J Johnson, and DeOnna so used to me stressing the J, I heard her stress it also. My father taught me years ago growing up, he said, son, whenever you're doing business, he's always been an entrepreneur, and that's where I got it from. But he said, whenever you're doing business, use your middle initial. And so I've always done that as my father taught me to do. So I'm Keto J Johnson, and I am a serial entrepreneur. I just say that to say I've been involved in a lot of different things, a lot of different industries, a lot of things that worked, and just as many things that did not work over the years. But everything that I did always in some way or another led me back around to what my passion is, and that is real estate and all things real estate investing and teaching folks how to create generational wealth through real estate investing. So I'm also a seasoned investor. I acquired my first property when I was 20 years old. So 23 years later, I'm still very active as a seasoned real estate investor. And the best thing that I know, or the way that I know to explain my scope of experience, is simply to say if it has anything to do with residential real estate, I either do it or have done it. So that's everything from wholesaling to fix and flipping to, of course, being a landlord to tax sales to new construction to owner financing, and the list goes on and on. If you can think of it as it relates to residential real estate, I either do it or have done it. I've also done some things in commercial real estate. I'm currently renovating an apartment building that I acquired about 6 months ago. We have plans to build some additional apartment units on that parcel of property. I've sold some commercial buildings, and so I have some commercial experience, but the vast majority of my experience is in the residential space. And so for that reason, many people consider me an authority on real estate. I've been featured on CNN, Yahoo Finance, on a number of radio stations, also Black Enterprise, and the list goes on and on. And I'm also a best-selling author. I wrote several books, but the one that made me a bestseller is a book entitled Real Estate Wealth: How to Remove the Guesswork from Real Estate Investing and How to Create a Six-Figure Strategy. And so if you're interested in that book, you can go to realestatewealthbestseller.com. If you go to that site, of course, you can get it on Amazon and get it in 2 days if you're a Prime member. But if you go to realestatewealthbestseller.com, I'll send it to you free. If you just pay the shipping and handling. But the reason I wrote this book is after 20 years in the industry, after mentoring and coaching folks from literally around the country, all walks of life, the one thing that became very apparent to me is that most real estate or aspiring real estate investors never achieve any real level of quote unquote success simply because they are confused. they're confused. There are so many strategies. And tonight we're talking about short sales, and I'm going to talk to you about how you can marry that short sale strategy with you if you're a wholesaler or another type of investor. But the concern that I have for new investors in particular is that they're just stretched too thin. And so I wrote the book to help an individual really discover what strategy makes the most sense for them in your life, based on where you are right now, based on what your time looks like, what your money looks like, what your credit looks like, based on those three very important factors, time, money, and credit, then what strategy makes sense for where you are. It's not a right or wrong answer to how you answer that question, how much credit or how good is your credit? There's no right or wrong answer. But once you are clear on the answer to that time, money, credit conversation, that determines where you need to focus as an investor. And I use that word I use that word focus on purpose, because it's easy to get involved or be stretched too thin. I had a mentor or mentee rather, that when I first met him a few years ago, he had just paid over 30 grand for a very popular dad's real estate investment education. And every time I saw him, at the time I was hosting meetups and monthly meetups, which is where I met DeOnna some years ago. And every time I saw him, he'd come to a meeting this month and he'd say, Keto, I'm focusing on, right? And then he'd come back next week or next month and say, Keto, I just took a class on. And then he'd come back the next month and say, I just learned about this. And finally, after several months, I said to him, have you done any deals? And his response was, actually, I haven't. And when I sat down and had this conversation with him about focus, about time, money, credit, what strategy makes sense for you, he went on to do his first deal and then his second. And now he runs he and a partner of his run a wholesaling operation that's quite successful here in Atlanta now. So the book is available for you if you're interested. Now, the reason we're here tonight is to talk about short sales. And so let me define what a short sale is. A short sale is when the seller of the property owes more on the property, on the mortgage, or has more liens against the property than the actual value is. So for instance, if the house is worth $100,000 and they have $110,000 worth of liens against the property, then it may be a candidate for a short sale. A short sale is when the bank agrees to sell the property short of what is owed on it, when they're willing to take less than the mortgage balance because they desire to move on and to settle the debt and to get that asset off of their books as a non-performing asset. So that's what a short sale is, when a bank or a lender or mortgage holder is willing to sell the property or allow the owner to sell the property short of the actual balance that is due. All right. And so it is believed that we're coming into a season where short sales are going to be more prevalent, as individuals who have been deferring their mortgage payments for months and months and months because of COVID. At some point, all of those deferred payments are going to stack to the top of the loan and come due. And some, in fact, quite a few individuals are not going to be able to handle it at that point. And so it's believed that that short sales and foreclosures are going to be on the rise in the coming months. So the first question that I often get around short sales is, why would the lender consider selling the property short? Why would the lender agree to take less than what is owed? And I kind of defined that already, but the reality is, if a property is worth less than what is owed, and the individual who has the mortgage is behind on their payments, then that asset to the bank is a non-performing asset. They're not making any money on it, and they're not getting monthly payments. And the bank is in the business of loaning money. They make money on interest. They really don't want the property. They want the interest, and they want the interest payments. There's a rule in the banking industry, and I don't know the exact percentages, but for every loan that or property or asset that is non-performing to the bank, there's a certain percentage above and beyond that amount that bank has to keep in cash reserves because they have that non-performing asset on their books. So again, I don't know what the exact number is, but just for sake of conversation, if there's $100,000 that is owed on a property and that $100,000 is non-performing, then there's a multiple above that $100,000 that the bank has to keep in cash. So if the bank has to keep that in cash, that means the bank can't loan that cash out. And if the bank can't loan that cash out, then they can't generate any interest revenue. And so it becomes essential for them to get rid of that non-performing asset, even if they have to take a loss on it. Another thing to note is when a property goes into foreclosure, the bank typically loses even more money if the property goes to foreclosure because there are then attorney fees involved, et cetera, et cetera. So for this reason, the bank is willing many times to wash their hands of a debt, to simply say to the person who owes the money, I will take, allow you to sell this short so you can move on with your life. And so we can get this asset off of our book so that we can also move on. So then the next question is, who becomes a good candidate for a short sale? Who's a good candidate for a short sale? A good candidate for a short sale is somebody who's upside down on the mortgage payment, or who owes more, right, than his worth. Secondly, somebody who is in arrears. So generally, a bank will consider a short sale once the person who owes the money is at least one mortgage payment behind. So they have to be in default for a bank to consider a short sale. So if the individual is current on their payments, even if they're upside down, the bank considers that a pretty good risk. At least they're paying. So the asset is not non-performing. So there's no real reason for them to consider a short sale. But the moment that property goes 30 days in arrears, they're one payment behind, that becomes a good candidate for a short sale. Other good candidates for short sales are properties that have extensive deferred maintenance, or other issues with the property that allow it to be worth, or cause it to be worth less than what is actually owed on it. Why short sales should be in a wholesaler's tool bag. So I don't, for the benefit of the wholesalers who are on the training tonight, on the call tonight, I think that wholesalers often overlook this as a strategy or as a tool to add to their wholesaling tool bag. And this is why. This is what I mean when I say that. Wholesalers are taught to get lists, right? Go after these leads, follow up, go after individuals who have assets or who have property that's distressed. You find these individuals in distressed situations. I know wholesalers who have budgets of $5,000, $10,000 a month just to market for distressed sellers, right? They go through this process of marketing for these distressed sellers. They finally get on the phone with a distressed seller. They negotiate it. They have a seller who is ready to get rid of that asset. They have a wholesaler or a seller who's ready to sign the contract until they begin to talk numbers. And when the wholesaler does his or her formulas, figure out the ARV, et cetera, they come back to this individual and say, okay, based on our numbers, based on our calculations, we can afford to pay you our MAO, our maximum allowable offer, we can pay you $112,000 for your property. And then the distressed seller says, that won't work because I owe 120. And what the average wholesaler then does is says, well, it won't work. And they consider that a dead lead, and then they move on to the next lead in their pipeline. I come to the table to say, hey, that is a great candidate for a short sale. You have a distressed seller who's ready to move on, but that seller owes more than you can pay or are willing to pay for it as a wholesaler. And so I network with a number of wholesalers, bring me deals that they believe are dead deals. And then I step in, our team steps in and negotiates the short sales and keeps the wholesaler in place. So our goal then is to get that property that the seller owes 120 on, is to get that property negotiated south of 112,000, because that's where the wholesaler needed to be, right? So I think this is a very important strategy or a tool that you can add to your tool bag. If you don't focus on short sales as a sole strategy, it can be a tool that you apply to other sole strategies that you focus on. So what does a short sale consist of? Like, the easiest way to say it is a bunch of paperwork and a bunch of follow-up. I did attend the class last week from the other individual that teaches around the same topic, and his strategy is a little bit different from what I'm talking about tonight. He teaches individuals how to go out and solely focus on short sales, which is an amazing strategy on its own. Solely focus on short sales, how to work directly with those sellers, how to negotiate the short sales with the bank, and how to follow that process to the end. Well, the short sale process can be quite extensive. There's a lot of paperwork involved. Every bank is different based on what type of paperwork that is required. The process is different for each bank and for each short sale. So if short sales is your only strategy that you focus on, then by all means, I encourage and support that you negotiate them yourselves. But if short sales is a strategy that you want to add as a tool to your tool belt to assist you in other strategies, my suggestion is, Mr. Wholesaler, if that's what you are, Mrs. Wholesaler, focus on wholesaling, and then bring somebody on your team to work through your short sales, to negotiate your short sales for you while you are operating at your highest and best use, which is wholesaling and negotiating for wholesale deals. So how long does a short sale process take? I've been doing this for a number of years. And the shortest short sale that I ever accomplished was just about 30 days or so. It happened one time in 23 years. That is a miracle. And I would certainly not offer that you expect that to happen. The longest short sale that I ever negotiated took about 18 months. The average short sale takes about 3 to 4 months. Okay. So that's another reason why, if this is not your sole focus, if you're doing other things, you assign this to somebody else to negotiate for you, because it's not only is it a lot of paperwork, but it's a lot of following up with the bank, making sure that every I is dotted, making sure that every T is crossed. I can't tell you the number of times we submitted paperwork to the bank. They say it's going to take 4 or 5 days for us to get it in our system. Call us back in a week. We call back 7 to 10 days later, and they say, we can't find it. Send it in again and give us another 4 to 7 days and call us back. That's pretty common in the short sale negotiation process. So that's why, one of the reasons why it can take so long. And it's just it's a bureaucratic process. You know, again, every I has to be dotted, every T has to be crossed. There are a number of eyes that have to look at it and to approve it and sign off, etc. Even once you're assigned a negotiator at the bank, they have individuals that they have to report to. So the process is not, it's fairly simple, but it's not easy, and it's certainly not quick. What if the property is in foreclosure? What if it's in foreclosure? Meaning, when I say in foreclosure, I mean, what if there is a foreclosure date that has already been set? So here in Georgia, we have a bank or lender has to advertise a default for 4 weeks prior, leading up to a sale that happens on the first Tuesday of the month. All right. So if there is a property that is already in that process, that there is a sale date that has already been set, that advertising has already started happening to lead toward that foreclosure date, that auction date, yes, it can still be negotiated as a short sale, but at that point, time is not on your hands. Time is not on your side. The closer you get to the sale date, the less chance you have of getting that short set or getting that foreclosure stopped. These are typically two different departments at the bank. There's a loss mitigation department that is going to typically negotiate and deal with the short sales, and then there's a foreclosure department. And so what typically needs to happen is, if there's a foreclosure date set, you've got to get documentation to the loss mitigation department in time for them to consider that you have a viable opportunity to actually follow through with the short sale. And once you convince the loss mitigation department of that, then the loss mitigation department has to walk over to the foreclosure department and say, hey, we think we can work this out without going through the foreclosure process. Please stop the foreclosure date and let us have this file back so that we can work through this short sale. That's literally what has to happen. So the goal really is to get the short sale and to get into the negotiation once a person is at least one payment behind, 30 days in arrears, but not in the foreclosure process. But once it gets in the foreclosure process, again, yes, it's possible to get it stopped. We've actually gotten them stopped just about 7 days prior to the actual sale date. But the sooner you can get to the loss mitigation department, the better. How will a short sale affect the seller's credit? Now, this is a great question, and it is also a point oftentimes can be used as a point of negotiation. Because if an individual is in arrears, they're past due 30 days, and more especially if an individual is in foreclosure or headed toward a foreclosure sale date, their credit is already taking a major hit. A short sale looks better on a person's credit report than a foreclosure does. A short sale says to other creditors that this individual is willing to comply, took the steps necessary to address this debt without it going all the way through to the foreclosure process. So, I mean, there's still a hit on the individual's credit. There's still going to be some recovery necessary to rebuild credit after the fact, but it does look better and it's easier to rebuild post short sale than it is post foreclosure. What condition should the house be in? Well, the biggest thing here with this, it can be an amazing condition, but at the same time, the worse, at least the home is perceived, the better, because when you're negotiating a short sale, the whole point is to prove to the bank or the lender that this house is not worth what the owner owes on it. So if anything that you can do to help prove that, the better, right? So I've had individuals who moved out of the house, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but they've moved out of the house and they feel like that before the inspection happens or before the bank comes to do a BPO, BPO is a broker price opinion. So let me back up a step. Once you are in the negotiation process and you have a property under contract, and now you're negotiating with the bank to get the lower price or the price reduction, one of the things that the bank is going to do is you're going to say to them, this is what the house is worth, and that's why we have this contract to buy this house for 112 as opposed to 120, right? Or whatever that number is. You're going to say, this is why, because the condition and the comps in the area, et cetera, don't allow it to be sold for 120. Then the bank is going to come back and say, okay, we're ordering an evaluation. Sometimes they order a BPO, which is a broker price opinion. That's when they send out a real estate agent or a broker or somebody, a third party that goes out, does an analysis and comes back and says, this is what we think this house is worth, right? Or sometimes they order a full-fledged appraisal. They send an appraiser to go out and come back with an appraisal report, right? So when the BPO agent or the appraiser goes out to the house, the goal is to prove to that individual that this house is worth less than the bank thinks that it is. So I say all of that to say the condition of the house is not expected to be in tip-top shape, right? I've had wholesalers who have property under contract and they say they want us to help negotiate this short sale for them, and they're going to get a dumpster and go over and clean the house out. And I say, hey, no, don't clean anything out. Matter of fact, don't even cut the grass unless the HOA makes you do it before this inspection, because we want to make sure that in the best way that we can, we want to make sure that we're able to prove the value that we are saying it is worth or quote unquote not worth. How much does a short sale cost the seller or their investor? Now, the seller in a short sale, or the owner of the property in a short sale, rarely can walk away from the table with any money. Again, they owe 120, we're trying to buy it for 112. So the bank, generally speaking, is not going to want to see that seller walk away with any cash. They usually want the seller side of the settlement statement to say zero. There are some times, and there are also some banks who will give some sort of cash for keys or some sort of incentive to assist that distressed seller with moving expenses. I have seen them give $2,000, $3,000 before to help an individual move on. But more times than not, the individual, the seller, cannot make anything at the table from a short sale. It is typically going to be zero on the seller side of the settlement statement. All right. So, but it does not cost the seller anything to do it. If you bring on the services of a team or someone that negotiates the short sale for you, nobody gets paid anything unless the bank approves it and unless the property goes to closing. And most negotiators or companies that do the negotiation for you don't charge anything. And I would suggest that you not work with somebody who requires you to stroke a check up front, because the best negotiation for short sales includes allowing the bank to eat all of the fees at the closing table, at the settlement, at the settlement that happens. So the negotiator's fee is also wrapped into the amount that the bank is willing to settle short for. So using the same example that we've been using tonight, they owe $120,000. The investor wants, or the buyer wants to pay $112,000 for it. Any fee that the negotiator would make is included in that $112,000. So I say all of that to say there should be no money out of pocket for you as the wholesaler or the investor, unless you're the end buyer. There should be no money out of pocket, and it certainly should not and does not cost the seller anything to work with you or to work with an individual on a short sale negotiation. Can the seller make any money at the closing table? I already addressed that. Sometimes, most of the time, no. Should the house be vacant during the short sale process? When you are working with, and I'm just speaking to you, and everything I'm saying tonight is from my experience, right? It's from my experience. When you are working with an individual who is distressed, who is in arrears with their payment, a person knows, anybody who has a mortgage knows that once they are 30 days behind and they start getting collection calls, they know that at some point in the future, whether it's in a couple months or 4 or 5 months, at some point in the future, their property is headed to foreclosure. And if it goes to foreclosure, then they're going to have to move. They know that. And so I can't tell you the number of individuals or short sales that we've worked with in the past where a person is nervous and they're saying, I got to get out of this house because I don't want to be put out of this house. Well, remember I told you the longest short sale it took me to negotiate was 18 months. I've seen far too many people move out of their house a lot sooner than they had to. Now, I want you to understand what I just said. I've seen far too many individuals, distressed individuals, move out of their house a lot sooner than they had to, simply because they had a fear or a concern that somebody was going to show up at any moment and tell them they got to go. Well, if they are actively working through a short sale and you're actively helping them negotiate a short sale, nobody's just going to show up out of the blue and say, you got to go. There's a notice given. The average short sale, once it is approved, the bank then gives you 30 days to settle. So let's assume it takes 6 months to get an approval and then another 30 days to close. If a distressed individual moves out too soon, they potentially left a house sitting vacant for several months that they could have stayed in until it was time to settle on the property, until they actually had to move. So should the house be vacant during the short sale process? If it is vacant, that's cool. If it is vacant, then you can almost guarantee there's for certain the bank is not going to allow that individual who owns the property or who's selling the property to get any cash at the table, because there's no reason to give them cash. They've already moved out. If the property is vacant, okay, but it doesn't have to be vacant during the short sale process. And then a lot of times it's better that it isn't. Can you wholesale a short sale? And the answer to this question is probably not. But then the flip side of it is, yes, there are ways that you can. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here. There are ways that you can work to wholesale a property that you've negotiated as a short sale. But generally speaking, when the bank comes back with an approval letter, that approval letter states the conditions of the sale. And there are some times in the conditions of the sale where there is what's called a deed restriction. That is when the bank says, yeah, we agree to sell it for $112,000 as long as you close 30 days from today's date. The buyer has to close 30 days from today. This is what the settlement statement has to look like. This is the most, if anything, that the seller can walk away with. This is how much we have to get, and this is how much we're willing to sell short. This is what we will forgive. All the terms of the approval. And sometimes in that approval, it will say, and the buyer cannot resell this property for 30 days, for 90 days. All right. Sometimes it says the buyer cannot resell this property for more than 120% of what they bought it for. So if you bought it for 100 and you sell it for 119, you're cool, but you can't sell it for 121.5 because that's more than 120% of the purchase price within a certain number of months. So sometimes there are deed restrictions. When there are deed restrictions in the short sale approval, then that's where you have to be creative on how you might be able to wholesale that property, right? The other thing I want to note is when you are doing a short sale, and if there is not a deed restriction in the contract, you are going to have you're going to have to bring funds to the table to close it. So you're able then, if there's no deed restriction, you're typically able to do a double closing, but you're not able to assign it. And typically the attorney is not going to allow what we call pass-through funds. So you're going to have to have transactional funding or bring your own cash to the table to satisfy the purchase of the short sale, and then secondarily resell that property in a double closing scenario. Why a short sale facilitator is important. I kind of mentioned that earlier. A short sale facilitator is important, one, because they're going to stay on top of it. Typically a short sale facilitator or facilitation company, that's all they do. So they're sitting at their desk, facilitating, negotiating, passing paperwork all day, every day, your file and other files, to make sure that these deals get to the closing table. When you have a short sale facilitator involved, less falls through the cracks because somebody's on top of it. Unless short selling is your only focus and you're on top of it, it's difficult to manage wholesaling over here and rehabbing over here and manage tenants over here, and at the same time stay on top of this short sale negotiating process. Not only that, but I told you earlier that the bank typically is going to eat the fee of the facilitator. So you have nothing to lose in the process if someone else is playing quarterback to get that deal to the closing table. So short sale facilitator is important for that reason, or those reasons, and we could talk more and more about why a facilitator knows how to get the deal done. What role does the attorney or title agency play in the process? A good short sale facilitator is also going to have a relationship with a closing attorney, if you're an attorney state like Georgia, or a title agency as in other states, because a good short sale facilitator knows how to send a complete package to the bank to get a short sale approval. One reason that short sales can take forever is because a bank wants to look at a complete package. If there's a checklist of 10 or 12 or 15 documents that are needed and you send in 13 and leave out 2, the negotiator at the bank is simply going to take that file and put it on the bottom of the stack and go to the next one and shoot you an email to say this is an incomplete file. So an attorney or title agency is going to make sure that a part of that package that is being sent to the bank includes a preliminary settlement statement. Now, the average attorney is not going to want to spend time creating a settlement statement, doing due diligence on a property, pulling a title report on a deal that they don't even know if the bank is going to approve or not. But a short sale facilitator has a relationship with attorneys and title agencies who are willing to do this. So that when the package goes to the bank to offer a short sale, included with that is a settlement statement that lists what the liens are, that a title search has already been done, so that your presentation to the bank is a complete presentation with accurate numbers. So it's important to have a great title agency on board with you in this process. What role does a real estate broker play in the process? And this is where my firm comes into play, because aside from all the other things I do, I'm a real estate broker. And so I'm licensed in several states. I have a partner that's out in Dallas. I'm licensed in Texas, rather. I have a partner that is in North Carolina. We're just opened up a brokerage in South Carolina. I'm licensed in Florida. I'm licensed in Alabama, and of course our headquarters is here in Georgia. Most banks will not consider a short sale unless that property has had market exposure. Most banks, as a part of their checklist, want you to send in, as a part of your checklist in your packet, they want you to send in a listing agreement and a full-fledged purchase and sale agreement and an MLS printout showing that the property is listed or was listed before the offer was made. It's not the case all the time, but in my experience over the last 5 years, every bank that we negotiated short sale with required that the property be listed. So that's where a real estate broker comes into play. You want a real estate broker on your team that is a part of the whole process, that is working with the facilitator, that is working with the title agent to get the deal to the finish line. Somebody who is going to list the property, and hear me when I say this, who's going to list the property and still honor you as the wholesaler or the investor that brought the deal to the table. I'll let that sink in for a second. Because when the broker or the real estate agent lists the property on the multiple list service, everybody's eyes are on it. So you want to work with a broker that understands your role as the investor who desires to purchase the property. How can a wholesaler pivot the conversation and introduce the short sale option? In the example I gave earlier, you go back to the seller, you say, I can only pay $112. Seller says, that's unfortunate, I owe $120. You then say, well, I am partnered, our firm is partnered. There's something called a short sale, explain what the short sale is. And I work with XYZ firm who can take care of this negotiation process, who can assist in salvaging your credit, who can help prevent your property from going to foreclosure. We work together all the time. Let us have a conversation with him or her to see what they can do. And this is literally how we work with wholesalers on a regular basis. Sometimes it's a three-way call to say, hey, this is our negotiation partner. This is our brokerage partner. I want to introduce you to such and such, and the conversation goes from there. As a brokerage partner who also has a facilitator working with us, then we step up to the plate, take begin to work directly with the seller and put you under contract so that once the property is listed, you are now the buyer that we are negotiating with the bank. And so that's the role that Buy and Selling, my brokerage, that's the role that we play in the process. Again, we're not the only ones that do it, but we are certainly a viable option. Whoever you allow to partner with you, make sure that they understand the whole short sale process and that this is something that they specialize in and not just do on occasion. So I don't just teach this, and I think DeOnna knows me by now. Anything that I ever open my mouth to teach on a stage, and it's a whole lot of topics, are not things that I read in a book. They're things I might have written in a book, but not things that I read simply in a book. What I teach, I do, and I've done it for years. And this is just one example of a short sale that not only did we negotiate, but I actually purchased as the buyer. All right. And so this property is a pretty good example too, because when we started the negotiation process, and it was a few years ago, I think I offered like $125,000 on this house. The bank came and sent out a BPO agent. The BPO agent came over, did their numbers, and went back to the bank and said, hey, we think this property is worth 150. And I didn't even talk about this in the presentation, but this is where it's important to have a good facilitator, somebody skilled on your team. Well, when they came back and said, we think it's worth 150, we challenged or we disputed the BPO. So this house has stucco. So that's the first thing we noticed, right? So we called out a stucco contractor. We called out a guy somebody to do a mold test. There are a few things that always cause a bank to listen closer. You say this house has mold, right? This house has stucco. Now this is, not to go too deep, this is a type of stucco that water is known to get behind. It's not hard coat stucco, and it's a challenge here in Georgia, the difference between hard coat stucco and synthetic stucco. This had synthetic stucco. And so water was penetrating behind it, which caused some mold issues. Another thing that's very often happens with the synthetic stucco house is you have termite issues. So we had a mold guy come out, we had a synthetic stucco guy come out to give us a cost to cure all of that. We had a termite guy come out, and we submitted our estimates back, and we challenged the appraisal or the BPO. And after challenged the BPO, we bought this house like we wanted to buy it for $125,000. We put the renovation in it, and then we ultimately sold it. I think we sold it for $325 or something like that. And this was actually one of the first deals that I flipped and walked away with a check for over 6 figures. That was, I don't know, 6 years ago or something like that. All right, so I'm gonna stop here and take any of your questions. I know I talked a lot. DeOnna, what's the best way to handle questions? Will they come up in the Q&A?
You guys can put them in the chat or the Q&A box. Does anyone have any questions? Did you see Dana's question here in the chat about governments modifying loans? Did you see that one already?
I did it. And where?
Okay. So she asked, do you believe the government will begin to modify loans, or any lender for that matter?
I think it may happen for some. I don't think it's going to happen as a general rule across the board. And I think there's going to have to be some qualification process involved. Unfortunately, if the individual, once all this stimulus money stops, if the individual is still unemployed for some reason, or just can't prove that moving forward they can continue to make the payment, then I don't think, as a general rule, that the government is just going to modify all loans. I think there are going to be a number of properties headed into foreclosure and into the foreclosure process at some point.
All right, that is good insight. Do we have any other questions, you guys? We have just a few more minutes left. If you have a question, go ahead and type it in the chat or Q&A box. It looks like there aren't any questions. But Keto, thank you so much. You brought the house down as I expected.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. I told, for everybody stuck, I said I was going to provide a free resource. And so you can go to this link and get a book that I wrote entitled How Not to Lose Money in Real Estate. So this came as a result of mentoring folks for a number of years and a number of interviews that I had that talk about the 10 biggest mistakes that most investors make. So you can go to that bit.ly link, bit.ly/creative deals 101 and download that resource.
Right, y'all better go get that book for sure. Any other questions? I see a comment that says no questions. The information was very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Okay, guys, so make sure you take, screenshot whatever you need to do to get the book information. I highly recommend to contact Keto. He's got his information up here. This one, I definitely stamp of approval, have seen the people that he's worked with. Great, also great broker here in Atlanta. When you have deals that you think that you need to reach out to a realtor or to a broker for, Keto is a good person to connect with. I know a lot of investors that do that. So he's someone you want to have in your back pocket to reach out to.
Let me say too, and I probably should ask at the beginning how many wholesalers are here, but if you are a wholesaler, I definitely want to be on your buyers list. One of the things that I do, and one of the reasons I'm licensed and have partnerships in the states that I have them in, is because I work with private equity funds and institutional buyers who are buying and holding rental property in all of those areas. And one of my buyers is being very aggressive right now, buying in, of course, here in Atlanta and in most major cities, Charlotte, Houston, Dallas, Jacksonville. We just did some deals in the Tampa area. So if wherever you are, if you're listening now, please add me to your buyers list because we're actively buying.
Right, fantastic, guys. So you just got a new buyer, you've got your free book, you've got a superstar contact here in Atlanta. Is it just it's not even just Atlanta, right, Keto?
No, it's not. It's not just Atlanta. So yeah, anywhere really, all over the country. If I'm not, if our team isn't negotiating short sales in your city or area, then we can connect you with someone who is. And also for my institutional buyer, they're buying in just about every major city, especially in the southeastern area or in the south. So yeah, wherever you are, I want to be on your buyers list if I know somebody there if I'm not buying there.
Fantastic. And this question just rolled in kind of in the same category if you're doing deals in other areas of Georgia. So that would be a yes, right?
Yes.
Cool. And I see info saved. They're about to blow you up, Keto.
Bring it. Bring it.
And also, I know some of you guys are from Clubhouse and connected with me there. Keto does the Sunday Clubhouse room, which is like off the chain. I think you might have one of the largest rooms during the week, which I'm not surprised. He does this. So on social media, not only follow him, Instagram, Facebook, and all of that, but if you have the Clubhouse app, that's a way to talk to him live on Sundays at 8 a.m. Very, very popular room.
Yes, look forward to having you.
Yes, that is a 90-minute room, 90-minute-ish.
Yes. Stress that.
But oh my gosh, well, thank you so much, Keto. I'm so grateful for you being here tonight. And I'm excited. I'm excited for those that are going to reach out to you and just grateful for your time this evening.
I thank you for the opportunity. Anytime you need me, DeOnna, just let me know.
All right. Well, cool. Well, you guys, thank you so much for attending. Have a wonderful evening. This brings us to the end. Remember, if you are on your trial of REI USA, you can opt in. I hope that you will stay on board. I know a lot of you said this was your first meeting. So once again, I do want to welcome you to REI USA. Once again, y'all know I said I recommend the 7 critical steps. I personally have gone through that because even if you're a business owner, sometimes you need to listen to someone else to just make sure you've checked all the boxes, right? And so go to the recorded webinars and make sure you guys watch that. Of course, I'm here as well. If you guys need anything at all, I am a licensed attorney here in Atlanta. So if you have questions about your contracts, forming your businesses, whatever you need, I'm going to put my email in the chat right now. And then, of course, our new lists are available. So if you would like to order a probate list, eviction list, divorce list, they all just came in from the courthouse. So I'm putting my website as well. So admin@lawclerkondemand.com, or you can just go to lawclerkondemand.com, fill out our contact form, and just let us know what you need, whether it's legal questions or you need some help with your real estate marketing, okay? Or if you got a question about REI USA, y'all know I'm very active on social media. My handle is, I'll put that in the chat too, Law Clerk on Demand. Everything is the business name. All right, very easy to find. I do think that this group may be led by a different person next month. We're still kind of verifying that, but that doesn't change anything for you guys. We'll just continue to have our speakers come in. We're here the first Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. It didn't show up in the chat. Oh, Lord, I put it on all panelists. Okay, hold on, let me try it again. What's going on with me today, Keto? All right, admin@lawclerkondemand.com. All right, our website is lawclerkondemand.com. And on social media, like Instagram or Facebook, you'll just type in Law Clerk on Demand and I come right up. So if you need to shoot me a DM, you got a question, you need something, I'm very active on social media, on Clubhouse as well. We actually have a Clubhouse room for REI USA on Tuesdays at 6:30. So that's totally free. You just pop in that room and all of the speakers will be in there as well. Okay, any other final questions or comments, guys? Otherwise, we're gonna wrap this thing on up. I think that's it. Okay, all right. Thank you again, Keto, and good night to everyone. We will see you guys in the next meeting.
Good night.
All righty. Bye-bye, y'all.